We exist to rescue and restore women and children who are victims of sex trafficking, and we're committed to preventing and stamping out this form of slavery through justice initiatives and public awareness. We were actually one of the first NGOs to address the under-recognized issue of sex trafficking. But nothing has changed about our mission. We still intend to eliminate sex slavery. We've evolved in our focus and the strategies we employ. Like many in the early days, I thought sex slavery happened over there. After an experience in India, I helped build a village of hope there for long-term restoration. We soon began working in other countries until we fully realized the scope of the problem in our own country. How could we work for justice on the other side of the world when 13-year-old girls were being forced into sex slavery right here in America? In mind-boggling numbers. Today, that's our focus. We must engage 4 strategies to eliminate sex slavery. First, change policy at the state and federal level, eliminating conflicting laws that punish the victim but give leniency to the buyer. Our Protected Innocence Challenge report provides guidance for each state on law and policy changes needed to create a safe environment for children. Second, develop training for first responders in law enforcement and the supporting professionals. Convene regional training that brings these people together with community advocates for a coordinated response. Then generate public outrage that children are used in commercial sex in our own country. We're doing this through publicity and awareness events. I wrote a book called Renting Lacey that tells one girl's horrifying story. Now, Do You Know Lacey has become our awareness campaign theme. It includes billboards that depict the disturbing message that men are renting someone else's daughter. These efforts will change the culture of tolerance. And finally, we must create restorative shelter for victims of this unique form of trauma. Since the beginning of Shared Hope, we've been involved with restoration. There are very few beds in the United States for this care, and no funding stream for these dreams other than private donations. The program that will yield the most benefit for everyone who cares deeply about stopping the sexual exploitation of our kids is the Protected Innocence Challenge. It grades each state's laws on a gold standard that will protect children from becoming victims, provide refuge and restoration to survivors, and penalize the predators that sell and the perverts that buy children for sex. Several groups and coalitions aim at the sex trafficking problem in various practical ways, but none have attempted to address it at the level of the law. Each state has its own assortment of laws and policies that fail to address this crime and are inconsistent with federal law. Many loopholes and escape routes exist for buyers and traffickers, and few victim services are provided. If children are to be rescued and protected, it will happen at the state level. Shared Hope's extensive investment in this project is paying off. States have rapidly responded to the opportunity to improve a low grade by adopting our clearly laid out recommendations. My experience as a congresswoman and state senator provides me with national and global anti-trafficking affiliations. Shared Hope's presence in Washington, D.C. gives us strategic proximity to policy leaders, and we have strong relationships with agencies like the Department of Justice, the Department of State, Association of Attorneys General, the Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the FBI, the National Bar Association, National District Attorneys Association, and many distinguished professional groups. Shared Hope is never static. Yet we're a lean and mean organization. We manage our money judiciously, and we do not waste time. The board made the decision in 2007 that while the 3 government grants in our history were strategic, we didn't want to be accountable to government, dependent on grant funding, or burdened by the bureaucracy of the government grant process. As a result, we're conscious that every dollar we spend is a donor dollar, given in confidence that we will use it wisely. We track certain metrics from each partner service provider, both domestic and international. The metrics include such statistics as numbers of women and children housed, number of outreach contacts, numbers receiving HIV treatment and other health indicators, numbers in the Women's Investment Network program, numbers in school, and many others. The indicators that measure the effectiveness of our training are increased requests for agency and community trainings, improved law enforcement tracking of missing and rescued youth, trafficking victims being identified and placed into restorative care instead of incarceration, and the numbers of trafficked victims identified through the use of our intake tool. Metrics used to evaluate the success of our Protected Innocence Challenge include the number of bills introduced and passed that reform state law according to our recommendations, the number of states with improved grades year to year, more states asking for legislative advice or strategy from Shared Hope, and increased financial support for the Protected Innocence Challenge as donors realize the influence of this campaign. Our international work began with a focus on the plight of women and children who were victimized by the commercial sex industry. In America, our research and legislative focus is on minors. So the question arises, has Shared Hope stopped caring about adult victims? Quite the opposite is true. For several years, Shared Hope has been providing outreach and services to victims of trafficking in the United States, the majority of whom are over the age of 18. Almost all the survivors we meet describe being recruited or groomed into the life before age 18. Our justice system is so broken that it helps ensnare the young adult who, if she survives that long, ages out of any hope for help and becomes more bonded to the only life she knows. It starts with kids, and we're starting with justice for them. Shared Hope has much to celebrate. Our villages of hope are serving women and children in other countries with shelter, education, vocational training, and the chance to become self-sufficient. We spearheaded the first international summit on sex trafficking and organized and directed the Predator Project that investigated the practice of global trafficking. We formed the War Against Trafficking Alliance in 2003 and hosted summits in 6 countries with the Department of State that had a ripple effect around the world. In 2006, we organized the Commercial Sexual Exploitation of Children Midterm Review for North America, and we've pulled together advocacy groups and coalitions. Yet we've always maintained independence. Perhaps our most far-reaching accomplishment is the Protected Innocence Challenge. States are using the information we've provided to improve their laws, thus reducing demand, preventing further victimization, and providing victim services. A major historical challenge we face is the national slide into a pornified culture, which is one of the great drivers of sexual abuse of children, and the pervasive attitude that boys will be boys, that it is acceptable for men to buy sex. That challenge manifests itself for Shared Hope in the difficulty we have had obtaining the financial resources to build the Defenders USA. a dynamic men's initiative. Men are the source of the problem, but are also the source of the solution. We know there are many men out there who rise above the cultural stereotype and defend women and children. Another long-standing challenge is getting the American public to acknowledge that sex trafficking is not just a foreign problem. We are addressing this challenge with the Do You Know Lacey awareness efforts. This program, along with increased press coverage, is finally opening eyes to the fact that there are thousands of American children being used for commercial sex. I would love to be able to invest more into the Defenders USA, as well as expand Do You Know Lacey trainings. Demand for the trainings has been phenomenal, but we only have funds and staff to do 2 major trainings per year. I would pour money into the shelter initiative so that we can have many more restorative shelters rebuilding lives. Right now, there are probably fewer than 100 beds available in shelters that specialize in restoration of trafficking survivors. I wish we could have multiple billboards up in every major city to keep the issue in the public eye, especially during conventions and sporting events. And of course, I would sleep soundly at night knowing our expenses for the Protected Innocence Challenge are covered, including additional staff so that we can provide much deeper response to the many calls for help from states trying to improve their laws. Given additional resources, we would likely take on expanded restoration work in the United States. The complex navigation of licensing takes time and resources, but the need is very great. Closely related, the access to justice for children who have been trafficked hasn't included the civil legal action for damages that could fund their recovery in a more long-term way, including funding the restorative shelters. We want to bring greater momentum to the Protected Innocence Challenge that has the potential to change the landscape of state-level responses to child sex trafficking.